Back. No. When did you start this whole love of escape games?
Well, the escape games I actually started around last July.
Oh.
I had told my friend Errol, who headed up the Escape Room Addict blog, that I got a notice. Somebody posted on my Facebook page a link to one in Vancouver, like way back in like May, I think, and. Yeah. I was instantly jealous because I'm a huge adventure game fan, and I actually played the online Escape the Rooms when they were like a big fad and everything.
Oh yeah.
And so I was like, oh, why don't these come to Toronto? And then I showed it to Errol. He's like, oh yeah, that looks cool. Whatever. And then somebody's like, oh yeah, my friend and I are going to go to one. And there's one in Toronto! And so when I found out that out, so he went to one. Loved it, and of course we found one to go to in July, and since then I've just been doing them quite a lot.
Right.
Not as much as Arrow, but still I've done over. I think I'm at 25 rooms now that I've done in total.
Impressive.
Yeah.
Now you mentioned that you played the online version. Now, how different is this experience for you?
The nice thing about computer games or video games is that there's only so much you can do, right? Like you generally know, like you might click on a piece of paper, and if that piece of paper does nothing, then you know that it's not important, or if it doesn't appear in front of you, you're like, all right, that's nothing. Whereas in the actual room, when you're there in person, there might be papers scattered everywhere. You don't know which one's important, and there's no computer to tell you that where a hot spot is to click on. Right. So, it's quite a different experience. Yeah.
Now, you said, so wait, what was your position at the website?
I'm a reviewer.
Reviewer. Yeah. So, what do you normally like, what are the kind of things that you look for when you're reviewing these?
When we go into a room, when we're trying it in a room, oddly enough, we always... we still review things like the pre-game experience, like when you just walk into the lobby. Right. And, how's the lobby set up? Is it this slapdash affair with somebody on his iPhone, like barely paying attention to you? Or is it, are they very welcoming people? Is it a nice setup? Is there somewhere to sit for people? Is there a place to put your belongings? Because that's surprisingly something that some places forget. And you're stuck like dragging your stuff with you through the room, which isn't always fun. And then we look at the room itself and and the presentation of it. And some rooms are like, they basically rented an office space and it's a very simple setup. Some of them are, we just recreated a Mayan temple, and you can put this thing on this thing and a door will slide open somewhere, right? Like some of them are very elaborate and have a lot of tech in them. Right. And then, of course, there's the puzzles themselves. And if the room presentation isn't that great, the one question I always ask myself is, well, how did they make up for it? How are the puzzles? Because there was one room we did where it wasn't that big of a setup. It was a very bare bones kind of room. Like, I think there was maybe a bed and a table in it and a filing cabinet off to the side, but that was one of the most challenging rooms we ever did, and it was one of the most rewarding rooms we ever did. Yeah. And so despite the fact that it wasn't all that impressive to look at, it was a very amazing experience that we had.
Now, the dying question is, did you finish that?
We did finish the room. That was like a huge ego boost to us because it was a brand new room, and up until that point, I think only one other team had beat it. So pretty impressive. I don't know how long it had been open for at that point, but when we got out, the facilitators or the attendants kind of looked at us like, "You beat it?" Like, and we were just as surprised. Like,
so they weren't expecting you.
It was just the team we had just happened to be firing on all four cylinders, and we all worked very well together. So
what was this team like? Who was it?
Well, it was me and Errol, and I think my friend Mags and her husband. Mike.
Yep.
Yes. and
my cousin Memes.
And Errol's cousin. And Errol's cousin, like Memes, Errol and I had done rooms together before, as well as Mags, Errol and I as well. So we all knew that we already worked well together. And
so do you usually do these kind of rooms in a large group, or does it vary?
It depends on the room.
Right.
I've only done one before with a group larger than, say, 6. And this one it actually asked for a maximum of 11 people. And we had the full 11 people.
Oh, so there is a maximum on these things.
So, yes, there is a maximum
Right.
on these things. Most times the rooms are maximum, 6 people.
Okay.
They're not usually that large. And
Right.
And usually I find that a group of 4 is more than sufficient to get a room done.
So now, what's your preference? A smaller group or a larger? Because I
Smaller.
know
For sure,
it can get complicated with a larger.
With the larger one, it was fine with the larger
Right.
one. There wasn't mass chaos or anything, but at the same time, I found that I missed out on quite a bit of the experience because we had so many people. We were all split up, and everybody was working on a puzzle. And by the time I finished mine, I looked around, and everybody was focused on their thing, which was good. But it meant that nobody could tell me what was going on, and
Right.
so
It's basically chaos.
It was it was a little bit of chaos, and
Right.
and there are some facilities that are specifically designed for 11 people, and
Right.
that's fine. But my personal preference is the smaller group, just because it's a little more focused.
And have you noticed when you had a smaller group that you ended up finishing the rooms, or did it matter?
We finished with the 11-person room, for instance.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
So
so
group
we
work-
did succeed, yeah.
Nice.
It's just my personal preference. Sometimes with smaller groups, I don't finish. And, and it's just maybe because we were tired, maybe because I'm with new people who,
Right.
who don't really know what they're doing, or I don't know what I'm doing, or we're a group of people who are all good at math and nothing else.
Right, that happens sometimes.
Yeah.
There are cases, though.
There are cases, yeah, and so, it can go either way. It's just, for experience purposes, I find that it's easier to get immersed in the room when it's a smaller group, and...
Right.
Yeah.
So where do your strengths lie playing this game? Have you figured it out yet?
Yeah, I'm pretty good with math.
Right.
When there's stuff, because most of the time, occasionally, they'll throw you a bone, and you'll go into a room and you'll have paper and pencil. And that's an amazing day when you can write things down.
Right.
But most of the time they don't give you anything. So you'll see a math equation on the wall and you'll have to figure that out in your head. And
She's
No
the
calculator.
processor, actually. We call her the
processor.
processor.
So
anything that needs translated, anything that's
Right.
math,
Yeah.
anything that requires you to sit and meticulously work it out.
You
that's
call to the
Amanda.
processor.
yeah, processor. So anything that involves math
Right.
or translation,
So you'd be the person.
I'm the person to go to. Sometimes we all have other skills too, but those
For
are
sure.
probably my strongest. And
No.
I suck at observing. I suck at
you
searching
suck at
for things.
And I think there must be a great deal of observing when it comes to playing this game.
It was great. We did a room with Errol and his daughter, because it was
Right.
her first adventure room or escape room, and she's 10 years old, and we were searching this room and doing puzzles, and we were racking our brains with the first puzzle. We spent a good 15 minutes on the first 10 to 15 minutes on the first puzzle, which when you only have an hour, you really start to notice the time crunch. And so we were
Right.
there's 6 puzzles in here and we're still on the first one. We've looked everywhere, and his daughter just looks up at the wall and is what about that? It was this painting that was out in the open, totally obvious for everybody to see, that blatantly displayed how to solve the first puzzle, and we were just
hey, maybe
Or
it's your daughter being the obvious stater, Sometimes you may overlook these things.
yeah, exactly.
That's what, for sure. And my other question is, you were mentioning about the elaborate versions.
Yeah.
Now, how you gave us a picture of how the simple ones look. How do the elaborate ones look like?
Just very good production values. We for instance, we went into one and it was like I said, like a Mayan temple theme. There
Right.
was they had actually, the walls were made of styrofoam, but they were all carved into intricate designs, and you felt like you were in on a movie set or something. Right? It was elaborate. There was another one we went to, and it was one of the only ones that I've seen. It was a vampire theme, and I had yet to see a vampire themed room that wasn't cheesy.
Right.
And it was fantastic. It was set in the 19th century. Everything was really authentic. They had bought antiques. They had, just the whole room setup was like you just feel like you're in, a 19th century house, and when you can do that, that's like all. Like I'm huge on immersion and storyline, and so if there's a good storyline and if you feel like you're actually there, then like my score goes way up automatically.
Right. Okay, so going back to like just how you started reviewing. So how did you start reviewing specifically? Like, how do you come to a place where you start reviewing escape games?
Well, I was already kind of a reviewer, and I've been reviewing off and on for years. I started as a theater critic after graduating university, and I took a course in and everything, and then after that I got sort of sick of theater reviewing, and but I've always been a huge fan of video games, and so I review video games very often, so I'm quite used to analyzing puzzles and figuring out if they work, because whether puzzles don't work because I'm just bad at them, or whether they don't work because there's an actual flaw in the design. So I got pretty good at discerning that, because there are certain escape rooms where I had to really like think about it and think like, okay, did we not solve this room because we were just kind of off our game, or was it because the room itself needs to be worked on, or right.
So there's a lot of things that go into reviewing it as well.
Yeah, exactly. And so when Errol was the one who started the blog, and he had the idea for the blog because we were going to enough rooms that he just wanted to talk about them all the time, and the obvious place to do that is online.
For sure, make friends over it. Why not?
Because nobody can give you weird looks online, and
no judging, for sure.
No judging, sure. And so he started up, and he asked if I wanted to be a reviewer for it. So it was.
So that's where all that started.
Yeah,
and it makes sense because you were saying how you were like a theater critic, right? Mm-hmm. And so you really enjoy that like transformation, basically. And
I do. It was
that's where I guess
very
that's where
natural transition to do.